Right now, Pittsburgh's best sports show is about to begin. Call us or tweet us. We've got things to talk about on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call.
Thank you very much, Josh. Good evening, everyone, and welcome inside the Fan Cave. You know the drill. Call us at 412-575-2600. On X, it's at KD Pomp, at Chris Mueller, PGH. I'm here in the Fan Cave. Chris is up at 93.7 The Fan. And tomorrow, less than how many hours? 13, 14 hours from now, the Pirates will put it on. Yeah, my math is not very good, Chris, but it'll be tomorrow, a little after 1 o'clock. Paul Skeens in his first start this season, of course, against Freddie Peralta, who's really good. I think the Mets have a very good team here, but it will be interesting to see what the Pirates do against this lineup, and specifically Skeens against this lineup. He seems to raise his level of play no matter who he's against. How do you break it down when you see tomorrow one game out of 162?
Well, I think the thing that always occurs to me when I consider opening day games is I always expect low scoring because you usually have ace versus ace, and you definitely have ace in Paul Skeens' case, and like you said, Peralta's really good. We all want to see, Skeens and Soto. I think that's the marquee matchup in this game. But I tend to go with low scoring, and I also tend to assume that this idea that you're going to have somebody go real deep into a ball game is kind of not realistic. I think most managers are looking to pull their best pitchers after probably 6 innings at most. And so I would expect this to be a game that very likely comes down to what the Pirates bullpen can do. And given the level of trepidation that it seems some otherwise optimistic fans have about that bullpen, I think it's going to get put to a pretty early test tomorrow.
Our KDKA.com/Connect poll of the week from Penn West University. And this is one that's interesting tonight. Can the Pirates win the division? Yes, the NL Central is weak. No, they can't, or maybe. I think they're not going to win the division, but I do think there'll be a playoff team in the wild card. I still think the Cubs are the team, and I would never underestimate the Brewers because whatever they do, they seem to find the right players to put in the right positions, even if they lose 1 or 2 throughout the course of their offseason, which they've done again this season. So I would handicap it Chicago first, Pittsburgh and Milwaukee battling for second, then the Reds, and then St. Louis. How about you?
Well, I think Chicago should be the obvious favorite. Now, as we know, one major injury, can change that. Obviously, that applies to the Pirates, too. No one roots for that for any team, especially not their own. But the Cubs have the deepest and best roster. I do think there's a case to be made that the Pirates, and this might be a little Pollyanna-ish on my part, that the Pirates have done enough to clearly surpass the Reds. The Cardinals stink, but that's okay. Say hello to the Brewers, which are the new Cardinals, same as the old Cardinals. They have devil magic. And even though they've traded away pieces, I do think it's reasonable to assume that they will at least be a factor for most of the year. I'm going to be pretty optimistic because a lot of this involves guys that we're all assuming are going to be pretty good actually living up to the billing. I've got the Pirates at 85 wins, so 85 and 77, Bob, which would be a nice big jump from last year. However, I think the one thing that's going to hurt them is, and you can go back the last couple seasons and get sort of a mixed bag, I actually think they're going to miss the playoffs by a game, maybe 2. I think it's going to be one of those years, and we have seen this, where the National League is really strong and you have teams that don't get in with 86, 87 wins, and I think that's going to happen this year. So I think there's going to be some really strong play in the NL East, and I think the West is going to be tough again, and I think the Pirates might be left out in the cold even though they have a big jump in wins.
Yeah, I'm with you with the 85 in there, in that category, but I also know there's some things working against them. Number one, I don't know about their defense, especially in the outfield. I have some questions there. I also think the left side of the infield until Connor Griffin gets up here could be, bereft of any talent in terms of power. I think Davis has to prove that. There's a lot of ifs on this team, and then you get to the starting pitching. We all expect it to be good. I'm sure you could be Skeens and Keller are somewhat reliable, but then beyond that, we don't really know. We have a guy, like Ashcraft, who hasn't really been up here all that long. Chandler hasn't been up here, and they have other guys that they probably can utilize in that role. But keep in mind, they traded Mike Burrows, who was a good prospect for them. They traded Johan Oviedo, so they gave up pitching to get hitting, which was the right thing to do. But they could be a little bit thin on that department there.
They could be thin. I think Carmen Mlodzinski is still a guy better slated for the bullpen, so we'll see how much movement there is in the back part of that rotation, really the number 5 spot throughout the year, Bob. I think that there is Like you look at, so I sort of alluded to this. We're all assuming good things because I think the vibes are a little bit better than they have been in a while. So then you tend to look at the glass half full side. Hey, Jared Triolo was a 2.5 win player last year, even though he couldn't hit because his defense was so good. When Connor Griffin comes up, and if he's as advertised, Triolo just becomes an elite defensive third baseman, and that has real value. Henry Davis has worked so hard on his hitting. Oh, yes, woohoo, he's working hard. He'll finally hit something other than like 175. These are all like best outcomes that we're all projecting. I do think Davis is kind of an interesting case because at this point, even though he's a former 1-1 guy, Bob, if he just hits like, I'm just going to spitball a number here, given what his power potential was supposed to be. If he hits like 15 to 18 home runs this year and has an OPS of like 720, doesn't that feel like it would be an absolutely massive bonus given the fact that against all odds his defense has actually gotten better, which was supposed to be his weak point? You get that, you get Griffin as advertised, and then you can shorten games and bring in a guy like Mangum as a defensive replacement in the outfield. Then you have a winning formula. But that's a lot of things going your way and not really anything going against you for all that to happen.
Right. A lot of ifs there. We'll see how it goes here. Tomorrow, it's the Pirates and the Mets, and the season will be underway. We'll also talk about the Penguins, who have a very important date tomorrow in Ottawa, a place that hasn't been all that good to them, and their final 11 games. Where are they going to end up? We want your phone calls at 412-575-2600. We are live here in the Fan Cave and up at the Fan. It is the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call with your opinions coming up next. All right, this is our Xfinity tweet of the night. Comes from former Pirate Jack Wilson, who says, congrats to J.J. Weatherholt on making the Cardinals opening day nod, turning back the clock to a 6U reunion team in Mars, Pennsylvania. That is J.J. along with Jacob Wilson, as they were teammates back then. And now here they are, and this is another sign how fast time is rolling along, Chris. And here we are watching these people grow up, and we get older along the way. But what an amazing story Weatherholt is, from Mars, West Virginia, he lit it up, and now, as I think the 7th overall pick of the Cardinals a couple of years ago, here he is with his debut.
Yeah, I mean, as much as we're hyped for Connor Griffin, and as much as Griffin being a teenager means his status as a prospect is wildly different and frankly better than Weatherholt's, Weatherholt, as Judge Smales would say, is no slouch himself. Because he is projected by a lot of people to be a strong Rookie of the Year contender in the NL, if not the Rookie of the Year leader. And for a team that's not going to be very good, fingers crossed, for once, they can kind of just trot him out there and let him learn on the job as long as he's not getting completely overwhelmed. So always good to see local kids doing well. And I would say it is a rarity to see a local guy like this who grew up around here, especially with baseball being a predominantly warm weather high school sport, where those warm weather states tend to dominate, having this much pedigree and this much potential to be an impact major leaguer.
412-575-2600. Let's get right to the phone lines. We have Dan in Moon Township, who's our first caller tonight. Hello, Dan. What's going on?
Good evening, Bob and Chris. Thanks for taking my call. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been a long-time Pirate fan. My dad got me interested when I was a kid back in the 1960s. But hopefully this Connor Griffith is everything that he's supposed to be. But I'm trying to understand the rationale for these long-term contracts. If I think about like Jason Kendall and Hayes, I mean, those kind of made sense at the time, although they didn't work out. But then I look at others like Tabata and Polanco, and they give these long-term contracts out, and this Griffith hasn't even played AAA ball, and wouldn't we have him under contract for several years anyway? So I don't understand the urgency to try to get him under a contract now without
Dan, and all it is trying to get a price that makes sense for longer term. This is a guy who's 19, therefore to give him $120 guaranteed million is a big deal. And if he is what you believe he is, and this is where you got to trust your scouts and everybody in your major league scouting and all the different departments that have to deal with trying to identify these kind of guys. If he is what you think he is, you'll be saving money in the long run. We just saw Pete Crow Armstrong get one yesterday, and I was a little surprised. It was 6 years, $115 million, Chris. But he's put in already 1 year where he was a Gold Glover, a 30-30 guy. He's an exciting young player. I think only 23 years old. So you're trying to get ahead of this, aren't you? That's the whole idea.
Yeah, you're trying to get ahead of it. I think PCA showed a little bit of vulnerability after that insanely torrid start he had last year, where maybe he was a guy who had a crazy streak but is going to settle in to be a little bit less statistically, which is why that number might not be as high as people thought it would be. In Griffin's case, though, it's really clear. Think about it this way. The minute he comes up, the Pirates have him for 6 years, in theory, right, if they don't sign a deal. Except they probably really only have him for 5 because they're looking to trade him with 1 year left on that deal if he's everything that people think he'll be to try to get the biggest return. Say you lock him in, yes, there's risk assumed by the Pirates that he turns more into a Gregory Polanco-style prospect who doesn't really ever pan out. Yeah, you're holding the bag, but if you get him to sign an 8-year deal for, I don't know, $120 million, right? Let's just use that as a ballpark, or 130 even. Then you really have him for 7 full seasons before you're still probably going to look to trade him, and you're trying to price it. And by the way, the Polanco deal, still not an insane amount of money by any stretch of the imagination, still worth the risk. I will remind everybody, the Jose Tabata deal was such a bad deal, perceived to be such a bad deal for the player, that I believe the agent either got fired or reprimanded by the Players Association for signing such a horrible contract. So it's just, Bob, it's very funny that we have a guy calling in who obviously cares about the Pirates a lot and sounded a little older, so he's coming from a different era. The Jose Tabata deal was an unbelievably good deal for the team, even though he was at best like an average major league ball player.
Absolutely. There wasn't much risk there because of the price involved. You're absolutely right. And yes, that agent got into trouble as well. Let's go out to Tom in is it Mount Nebo? Yes, Mount Nebo. What's up, Tom? How are you?
Thanks for taking my call. My question is, who are the NHL officials talking to when they go on the phone about these goals that are not goals, or goalie interference?
Yeah. It's all in New York. You know, New York, maybe they have some offices in Toronto as well, but they're calling because that specific area has all the different camera angles.
They have Mr. Magoo there, Bob. Just tell them the truth. They have Mr. Magoo. Stevie Wonder adjudicates too. You know, they have all these people. Then they sometimes just call up the opposing coach on the other bench very slyly, and they say, hey, how long do you want us to wait before we tell Muse we're not accepting this challenge either? One conspiracy, I believe, is that because Dan Muse has challenged for goalie interference so frequently and because he is a first-year head coach, I would not put it past NHL officials who don't have the reputation of MLB umpires like Angel Hernandez for just being arrogant look-at-me guys, but still probably don't like having their calls challenged. It wouldn't shock me if once in a while there was an unconscious bias there towards, hey, this guy's pretty new. We're not just going to let him run roughshod and keep challenging these calls. I really do think a sort of human element comes into play there, Bob.
Well, I hope not, because quite frankly, I don't understand it. And it's not just with Dan Muse. It's all around the league where you see some of these calls, and you saw the Jets game over the weekend here. They allowed a goal that completely looked like interference, and then yesterday it was the opposite of that.
No, that was not goaltender interference yesterday. Their explanations stink. We can all watch the video. They watched the video. I'm not saying the Penguins were going to win that game if that goal is upheld.
But it changes the direction
by Brazeau.
of it.
But it absolutely, right, it absolutely changes the complexion of a game. The Penguins, even though they didn't look great and even though Shelov's was bad, they're absolutely a good enough team, even without Malkin, to take that goal, if they get it, and put a little more pressure on Colorado. As a matter of fact, until that game got away from them a little bit later, I thought they were the better team, and their goalie just let them down, and Wedgwood was way better.
Wedgwood was great.
These are really consequential calls. I don't like that it's such a crapshoot. We're getting very quickly, Bob, to what is and isn't a catch levels from the NFL of indecisiveness and uncertainty on these.
And it's going to play a big role on some of these games and who gets into the playoffs, who not, because there's so many. Look at the numbers. Columbus now with 1 more point than the Penguins, who have 1 more point than the Islanders. Islanders have gotten a little bit of a tailspin. So tomorrow, Ottawa's on fire. They moved into a wild card spot. They're at home. Penguins typically don't play well there. They have Ottawa, then Dallas here on Saturday, and then a head-to-head with the Islanders on Monday. So, still the best bet for me is for them to get a spot in their division. I think the wild card is going to get away from them.
Yeah, I think a wild card probably does get away from them. I mean, if you beat Ottawa, let's say you lose to Dallas, because Dallas is great. But if you beat Ottawa in regulation, just because I still would like to try to keep any team that's jockeying for position, obviously, like, from getting the old 3-point special. The season feels like at that point it would come down to the Islanders. And if you can somehow, sweep that back-to-back against them and not give them anything and win both in regulation, then you start to exhale a little bit. But this is an aging team, Bob, and this is the time of year where teams really ramp it up extra as they're getting ready for the playoffs. And I do think you're seeing some of those tired legs and some shoddy goaltending betray them a little bit.
The only thing I'll say, and that's all true, but I also have seen them push back when they've been dealt with adversity throughout the course of the season. And if they continue that, then there should be a little bit of a pushback coming up in the next week. We'll see how it goes. We got to take a break. When we come back, I'm going to ask Chris this following question. Who is your NBA MVP? The reason I'm going to ask that is because I went back and forth with a guy today, and I thought my answer was a good one. We'll see what Chris has to say about that at 412-575-2600. 7 nights a week. It's the Nightly Sports Call, brought to you by Ireland Contracting. Bob Pompeani, Chris Mueller back with you. And Chris, I got into it today with somebody about MVP of the NBA. To me, it's a hands-down winner, and that's Victor Wembanyama. They're now 22-1 in their last 23. They're putting pressure on everyone, and if it's not for him, I don't think that team is even close to where they are. A lot of people look for Luka Doncic. I get it. SGA is always going to be there, as is Jokic, but to me, nobody's more valuable. What he does to alter shots is incredible, not to mention shoots threes, scores, does everything else. Who's your pick?
First of all, I'm assuming it was Steve Benko you were arguing with, and he was somehow
Devin
trying
Booker.
to argue.
He wants Devin,
Yeah,
and Booker said a good year.
He was just going to say anybody on the Suns just to troll you. He's too busy thinking about St. John's in the Sweet 16 anyway.
Don't spoil his party. They got 2 more wins to get to the Final Four.
So SGA is the massive favorite right now to win this, Bob. I do buy in. I think Doris Burke is about as good as it gets on NBA analysis, and she caught flack for calling him a free throw merchant. I kind of agree. He's really, really good. Don't get me wrong. But I don't know. I go for the aesthetic appeal. Wemby is such a good story because look at the narrative transformation of that team.
Right.
Doncic is going to get run because he's leading the league in scoring, and they're on a tear. Do you know who I'm actually going to go with, though? Somehow the forgotten man averaging a triple-double again this year, which is Jokic. I know that they are not the powerhouse team. I still think the dude, even though the award quickly should be for who's the best this year, he still is the best. He's averaging a triple-double, Bob. I got to say him.
I disagree.
Bye.
We'll talk tomorrow. Good night, Chris, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.